And welcome into the Who's On podcast, part of the Sabre Podcast Network, presented in part by Joe Reed and Alcova Mortgage. Score your perfect home today. It's a little bit of an anniversary here on the Who's On podcast. We are starting year 2, and what better way to do it? We got football season starting this week. Coastal Carolina, the season opener, is on the horizon, and it is coming quickly. And who better to talk about it with than the original guests of the Who's On podcast back from episode 1 with our season preview from last year. We got season preview coming this year. Greg Madia, Jacquie Franciulli, the dream team. Greg Madia from the Daily Progress, Jacquie Franciulli from Wahoos 24/7. Y'all know them already. You're already following them and getting all your information from them. The dream team, I say, because we are dreaming of making more accurate predictions this year, maybe getting half of them right compared to last year. Jacquie, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm still saying if Trail Harris was healthy, that would have been my breakout player of the
You were almost there. Greg, how about you?
Doing well, ready for another football season.
It is coming extremely fast right now. A couple of things just to get out of the way at the top of the show. As we enter this new football season, follow, subscribe on Apple and Spotify to the Who's On podcast. Please leave a 5-star review on Apple. Lets us know if we're doing it well or not. And then also check out and subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Who's On Podcast, over on YouTube. We got all the video versions of the podcast over now, along with some shorts, some clips from the shows. We got some great interviews as of lately, but an even better one today. Guys, I want to start off with this, and we kind of started doing this during the season last year, but going into the season, your season overview, one big take. Greg, what is your one big take heading into this season? What is defining this season for you?
They're bigger. Virginia is bigger, more experienced, and more proven on the offensive and defensive lines and at quarterback. So if Virginia fans are looking for the recipe for this thing with Tony Elliott's tenure to start to take off and move in the right direction, it starts with what they've done in the transfer portal on the offensive, defensive lines, and at quarterback.
Jacquie, and any.
Yeah, I mean, Greg kind of hit the nail on the head here on what was different, but I'm just going to add, I think there's a more sense of urgency that I've ever seen at Virginia. You can tell it from Tony Elliott's post-practice speeches, even pre-practice speeches saying about focus. So I think there's a new sense of urgency about this team. There's a lot of guys who are coming from either winning programs during their high school careers or have won in the bigger stage or have played in the bigger stage. So yeah, there's definitely a new sense of environment there. And I think that's a lot to do with all the new faces they brought in and having the confidence that they do have a better depth.
Yeah, combining both of y'all's mind, and this is just a phrase that I've heard from assistant coaches, from Tony Elliott, all throughout camp, is no excuses. Like, you got the depth now. You're going into year 4. It's put up or shut up time. In my words, like, it's time to win football games, and they have all the tools and resources to do it. And that's just a phrase that they've used themselves a lot. Is no excuses around the building. But let's get into our predictions. We'll start with the schedule first. This was a little bit mixed last year for us, but I want to start with key game for the season. It's Greg's favorite topic here on the show is what is the earliest we can call a key game of the season. Greg, I'll let you start because I know mine would just kind of annoy you.
Yeah, I'm going the Stanford game, September 20th. Right, you want to start out strong in the ACC. The NC State game's not a conference game. Whatever happens in Raleigh, you'll find out about them a little bit more in terms of UVA. But I think when you look at the schedule, you want to start strong. And that's a team going into the year you should beat, right? Stanford, there's a lot of unknown with what's going on with the Cardinal. They had a coaching change late in the calendar than typically coaching changes are made. They've got an interim coach in Frank Reich, sure accomplished from his time in the NFL, but a new coach and a temporary coach at this point, nonetheless. That's a game, especially with all Stanford's attrition, right? They lost some key players in the transfer portal after the coaching change. That's a game you got to take care of business with at home, and Virginia's wanting to play better at Scott Stadium. Tony Elliott's talked about it throughout his tenure at UVA. You start 1-0 in the ACC and you feel good about yourself.
I'm gonna put You called out the NC State game because that is my answer here. Last year we talked about the Wake Forest game, Jackie.
Yeah.
You and I had that one as kind of the key game, and that was an ACC game. So I get the
Yeah.
point there. But the reason I put NC State in this situation is because you've got this schedule that everyone's calling the easiest schedule in the Power Four right now. But if you can win your out of conference games, just how much better does that set you up for, getting to bowl eligibility, to getting off to a hot start? It looks a lot different if you're 3-1 versus 4-0 going into that Florida State game. I guess I feel a little bit more confident about that Stanford game, but you're right. That is a key game, getting off to a good start in the ACC play. I just think if they can get off to a 4-0 start by winning that game at NC State, like the momentum for the program looks a lot different. And I know we talked about momentum last year. They got off to a good start and it just
Yeah.
didn't help. But the schedule's not like it was last year. There's not as difficult a backstretch. So I think that NC State game is going to show a lot about this team. Jackie, what game do you have highlighted?
I actually agree with Greg. I think the NC State game will give us an evaluation of the team and see where they need to improve and what the expectations are. But honestly, I think the Stanford game for the overall season will be a kind of like the bellwether, because if they can win that first ACC game, they can create momentum in the conference, especially when you have the next few games, right? They face Florida State on a Friday night and then they travel to Louisville. So you want to have a great first win in the ACC to kind of go through that. I think the toughest stretch there, if you want to
Yeah.
say, because you do have Florida State. And so if you want to start well, so I think that's why I choose them. It's a very winnable game. They should be going in as a favorite. I think everyone has kind of discussed how Stanford, like Greg said, there's a lot of things that went down with attrition, new interim head coach, and all the stuff that happened in the offseason. So Virginia is in a better spot as a program. So this should be a winnable game. So if they do not win that game, that you start getting worried.
Oh yeah, I think that would sound the alarm bells there if they don't beat Stanford at home, especially with everything that has gone on with that program this offseason. Best chance for an upset. This is a little tricky when you have the schedule that Virginia has. And I'm not, I made the point on my last podcast with Chris Wright that there are 6 teams that brought in more transfers than Virginia on Virginia's schedule this year. So you don't know what to make of any of these teams, especially a team I'm going to pick for my best chance of an upset. And I'm just going with Florida State. I have loved this game on the schedule ever since it got announced. A Friday night game at home against Florida State, who for the old school UVA fan, this is a rivalry game. This is a game that everyone got excited about. Everyone remembers that daggum number 18 Marcus Hagen's out there on the field, and some of the other, classic games, the Anthony Poindexter stop on the goal line. So this is a game that means a lot to fans, and that's why I kind of like if they can get 4-0 and get momentum going to this Friday night game, and it kind of gets played up as a bigger game on national television, that would be a really cool environment. We saw, I mean, the Bryce Perkins game, back in 2019, like how huge that game was for Virginia. So that's why I'm putting Florida State here. I'm not convinced that Florida State is, what I think they're better than 2-10. I think we can agree on that. But I'm not a big Thomas Castellanos fan, as I continue to say, and I'm still waiting to see what this team looks like. But that would be a big kind of sound the message game for them if they win that at home. Jackie, you can go first on this one.
Yeah, this was hard for me to pick. And I've said this a few times, probably this offseason, if people have heard me on different podcasts, because of the way the teams have used the offseason of the portal. Do we really know what to expect from these teams? So when I say upset, you really don't know if it's going to be an upset by the time they play. So that's why preseason rankings are so off for me. Because I could always point to UNC as being an upset because they always play well at Chapel Hill, but I don't think that's going to be an upset at that point. I kind of agree with you. Florida State was one of the ones that I had picked just because of FSU's history under Norvell in the program. They're kind of up and down. They're not consistent. They lack discipline. They're going to play a early game Friday night on the road. So you have a lot of things that could go away for the Noles. So that's why I think Virginia could upset this. And I also point to the next game at Louisville. Those are probably the 2 upset watches for me because they always tend to play well at Louisville. So I could see them winning one of 2 of those matchups just because of history between these programs. And also, I think Louisville is the one that I think will be better just because they have a history of using the portal well and they have a system for it. But Florida State has not shown that they're able to use the portal effectively. And I'm like you, I don't trust Castellanos leading the offense. I'm not quite on that hype train, Sorry, Knowles fans, but yeah, I think FSU is my big upset watch for this year.
Jackie, they're not listening. It's all right. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Louisville, kind of what they're doing there with Brom and Isaac Brown is might be the best player in the ACC. He was incredible last year. Greg, who do you have on upset watch?
To me, it's Louisville. That's
Yeah.
been two really good games the last 2 years, and frankly, probably the two games Tony Elliott points to and say, if you're a little more disciplined, if you're a little more better depth wise, right? Maybe you win those games, right? It was a special teams blunder or a penalty. Like if you can eliminate those things, maybe you're able to finish those games against the Cardinals. So for me, that's the one you circle. And if you've been in Virginia's program, that one's got to mean a little something to you. Just in my opinion, because of how heartbreaking the losses were to Louisville the last couple of years. Those are games, especially like you think back to last year, right? That's a game. If you find a way to win, you might get to 6 wins, right, and get to a bowl game based on how the season was going. Virginia had all that momentum early in the season, couldn't finish that game, and it kind of started a downward spiral for the Hoos. The game in Louisville 2 years ago. That was one they led in the fourth quarter, right? Malik Washington had that great play on actually on a serious note, the play Paris Jones got hurt on, right?
Yeah.
Scooped up the fumble and scored it. Anthony Calandri had played well at times in that game. I think Devin Neal had an interception in a game for Louisville. Now he's on the other side. But I think even Louisville, like talking to Jeff Brom down at ACC kickoff, he was like, "Man, Virginia's been so close the last couple of years against us. It's just a matter of finding a way to finish." And I think they're aware, that gap was tight the last couple of years, and maybe with a little more talent and a little more depth for UVA, maybe that's one they feel like they can get this year. And if you get that one, you're probably on your way to a pretty good season.
You're right. That's pretty much a really good litmus test for how deep is this team now, because like you said, it's always been kind of fading away at the very end of the game and just couldn't quite close it. So that's a good call there. Louisville, Florida State, Duke, those have been the most popular games on the message board as games that Virginia doesn't have a chance in. So I think those are probably the only three that I could really call an upset. But I added a new question in here this year because I think ultimately the season just comes down to this game in the eyes of many fans. And so we might as well address it here. How many ever months out is this the year that Tony Elliott beats Virginia Tech? It's been since 2019 since UVA has won that game. Um, Jackie, do they finally get over the hump this year against a Virginia Tech team that it's kind of weird because they last year going into the season there was so much momentum and talk about Virginia Tech. This year, not as much. They still have a pretty talented roster in my eyes, but the talk hasn't been as much because they kind of failed last year in a lot of people's eyes.
I feel like I get burned so many times in this rivalry game. Every time I think Virginia is the favorite going into it, I mean, you either get a toss to a left tackle and going to the end zone, or or you have injuries that kind of derail that game. On paper, I think Virginia might have a little bit of an edge just because Virginia Tech, there's so many questions heading into that season. That staff is playing for their jobs. And there are a lot of good pieces that Virginia Tech has added, but there's still the same questions, I think, from last year.
Mm.
Yes, they added on the O-line, and there's difference there, but I still think there's a lot of questions on that team. And if they can stay disciplined, what's the situation with coaching decisions? So I can see Virginia winning. And the only reason why I'm even a little talking about this preseason is because of the timing of the bye week. Having the bye week just before the Virginia Tech game, this staff has done a really good job coming off of bye weeks since their arrival in Charlottesville. Some of their big upsets are coming off of bye weeks, like going in Tony Muskett's first year winning at Chapel Hill, coming off of a bye week. So seeing that, it makes me want to say that this could be the year where Virginia beats Virginia Tech.
That's a really good point about the bye week. It's something that I forget because it's so odd to have a bye week that late in the season, right before the rivalry game. I don't believe it's ever really happened on the schedule for Virginia, and so it adds a little extra dynamic to this. I have it as a yes, only because it's, why would you predict no at this point? Like if the teams are that kind of even on paper, and I kind of always go back to the quarterbacks because I mean that's just where you start evaluating a team. And I am not a big Kyron Drones guy. I thought he was kind of rising after, that first year at Virginia Tech, but then last year, like the guy couldn't throw the ball more than like 10 yards down the field accurately. And, Virginia Tech kind of set up their offense that way. And maybe if Drones is on the field, that keeps Pop Watson off the field, and that seemed to be a problem for Virginia last year. Greg, we got, I guess, two yeses so far, not definitive yeses, but I guess yes in one
Yeah,
sense.
the timing's interesting too because in the 2 weeks before UVA and Virginia Tech meet, Virginia Tech has at Florida State and home against Miami. In the
Yeah.
2 weeks leading into the Commonwealth Clash. And those are like big marquee type games that your team can get emotional about. And if they don't go Virginia Tech's way, right? Maybe you get them limping in, whereas Virginia's coming off fresh off a bye week. And maybe that makes a difference. At this point, I'm going to say it's really dependent on how the year is going to go for both teams. I mean, if Virginia Tech's having a a down year and Brent Pry's fighting for his job and Virginia's playing well, and you throw in the bye week, maybe it's the year UVA gets them. If things don't work out with this roster and things aren't going well for the Who's, there's no shot, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of how I see it. It's early. If you had to put me on the spot, I think things are going to go well for UVA this year. Uh, I, I, I'll give them the win. I'll make it three.
I think we're all kind of in the same boat. It's like, why wouldn't you at this point? I mean, it's not like one team is so much better than the other. So tie goes to the team that we have to cover every week.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of where we're at right now. All right. ACC finish. This is another one I added in this year. Last year they finished 13th, of course. This year, they were not very highly rated in the ACC preseason poll. I believe, what was it, 14th? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
14th. I know both y'all had them a little bit further up, but are you going to stick by your, ACC kickoff predictions, your preseason poll?
Yeah, I'm going still with 8.
Eight.
Uh,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
where I had them too.
yeah.
All
It's
right.
the preseason rankings too low, I think.
Yeah, it seems like I've seen a lot lately of just random, projections that get posted and has Virginia around 4-8 or, some record around that. I'm just like, if that happened, something really, really went wrong this year. But I kind of have them. I have them like seventh. I was just kind of going through which teams like I like a little bit more going into the year, and there's just some more teams that I feel like have a little bit more, definitive and settled going into the season. Greg.
The idea, I think it's really hard when you look at the ACC itself, right? You kind of have an idea for at least the teams that I put in the top six. Clemson, you kind of know what they're going to be. Miami, you think they're pretty good on the O line and the D line and probably have some better players than most in the trenches. And then you look at Georgia Tech and they know their identity, right? They know Haynes King is going to run the football. And they're gonna ground and pound until they beat some really good opponents, right? That's kind of been their MO under Brent Key. And then I think you kind of have an idea what Louisville is. You know what SMU is. SMU made the playoff last year, and their quarterback's back, and they've done a good job through the portal. They've got more than the quarterback back, too, and Kevin Jennings. Rhett Lashley's done a good job there. And then I think you kind of have an idea what Duke is under Manny Diaz, and they played excellent defense. And I think he's done a nice job building off of what Mike Elko did before Mike Elko left for Texas A&M. I think Manny Diaz has kind of picked up where it left off, and Duke's got a good transfer quarterback in from Tulane and Darian Mensah. So I think you kind of have a good feel for those six, and you think those six are going to be competitive kind of from start to finish throughout the year. Beyond that, look at what everybody did in the portal, and you're kind of playing a guessing game of what you like best. One of the reasons why I think Virginia is set up is what I mentioned at the top of the show is the what they did in the portal on the O line and the D line to enhance the rest of the roster and give the transfer quarterback Chandler Morris help. So I think that's what the problem is when you look at the ACC. There's new coordinators at different schools. There's new coaches, right? Bill Belichick at UNC. and he's got a different quarterback in Gio Lopez. So it'll be fascinating to watch it play out.
Yeah, Pitt's like the other one that I know,
Yeah,
and UNC, like those are the two that are kind of in that same tier right now with Virginia. And
yeah.
you could throw Virginia Tech in there too because they're kind of middle of the conference. And I think Pitt's got some people that believed in the first half of the season, Pitt,
I just
rather than the
don't.
second half. I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not one of those people because I saw the second half of the season, Pitt.
yeah.
But yeah,
That was a good win for Virginia last year at Pitt. And then Pitt collapsed, and I don't know what to make of whether or not they can be successful with that, Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed. Can that win them enough games at Pitt? And is the defense going to be better with Kyle Lewis in the middle linebacker? To me, that's the question with Pitt. Like, can they bounce back from that dreadful finish last year?
and Jackie, I mean, we haven't talked about, the biggest headline in the ACC, Bill Belichick at UNC. Do you believe in the Tar Heels? I keep saying like I don't know that much about that team because they don't talk to the media that often, so I haven't really been able to garner any tidbits from them.
I mean, it's it's been entertainment in the off season,
Yeah.
just with all the stuff that's going around with Bill Belichick and all the drama around that. So how much is that taking it away from everything else on the field? It's obviously going to be a distraction when you go in there. And I mean, there's so many questions when you go around UNC with a guy who's coached the NFL, and maybe it's because I'm also have inner bias against Bill Belichick as a Dolphins fan growing up. I just
Hey,
have
we've
inner
all been hurt by Bill Belichick. I'm a Falcons fan.
yeah, so I have a plenty of bias now. Sorry. But yeah, I just don't think I think UNC is going to have a lot of hurdles. And I think they have one of the easiest schedules. I know Virginia has been discussed as an easy schedule, but I don't think UNC leaves the state of North Carolina, even on the road. They'll only have one maybe road game outside of the state of North Carolina. So they have undoubtedly an easy schedule as well, and that's a good way to get momentum. So that's why I'm not sure what to think of UNC because their schedule is also a good one for them to create the momentum that they need to adjust the depth because they can win those games. So I'm not buying UNC this year. I think Virginia. I picked Virginia ahead of UNC for a reason. It's just I'm just curious in how the off the field stuff is gonna go.
They do have UCF, Cal, and Syracuse on the road in their defense, but yeah, it's other than that, you're right. They don't leave the state of North Carolina, so it does look like a pretty manageable schedule. Syracuse is another interesting team, but I looked at their schedule the
Their
other
schedule's
day.
brutal.
Funny enough, Lars Tiffany was the one that mentioned it to me, and he was like, "Go look at their schedule." And I looked at it, I was like, "That's as difficult a schedule as you can give an ACC team. Like, I don't think it
Yeah,
gets any harder than that. It's
yeah,
crazy."
it's brutal. I mean,
Sorry, Fran Brown.
and they got a
You're
tough
not gonna
opener.
shout. You're not showering a bunch this year. That's for sure.
They got a tough
um,
opener too.
yeah. All right. Record predictions last year, obviously 5-7, 3-5 in the ACC. Um, Greg, I'll let you hit this first because this is the big one right here. Where does Virginia finish record wise?
Yeah, I'm going 7-5, 4-4. They'll get to a bowl game with the shot to get to eight, right? With the shot to get to eight with a bowl game. And I think it's really important, right? If Tony Elliott's going to grow this program, it's critical that they get to the postseason this year. The program, right? The last time it was eligible to get to a bowl game was 21, the Fenway Bowl that was canceled because of COVID. They haven't played in a bowl game since the Orange Bowl in 2019. It's crucial for Virginia to make that step and get to the postseason. I think they'll do it this year. They'll get the 7 wins in the regular season, 4-4 in the ACC.
Jackie, where are you?
I agree with Greg. I think they're gonna get 7 wins. That's been kind of like been my go-to. Um, there was a because when I look at it, I think they're gonna easily get 4 wins in the ACC when I'm looking at it. Just so that's why I chose them to be in the middle of the pack. They're at 8, so I'm going with 7.
Just because I knew y'all are both going that way, I just changed my answer. I'm going 8-4. I'm going to be on the more optimistic side this year. I agree with the 4-4 in the ACC, but I think they sweep the out of conference and that gets them to 8 wins. I kind of like if I give them the Virginia Tech one, I kind of feel like I got to give them 8. Just just for fun and just to be different because we can't get to the end of the season and all be wrong. We
We still could all be wrong.
we absolutely could, but we gotta at least give it a little bit of separation there. All right, let's get into the player stat projections here. Obviously, we all I did last year we had passing yards leader because there was a little bit of a quarterback controversy going into the season. Not as much. Calandri ended up leading it, but there's nothing like that this year. We know Chandler Morris is going to be the starting quarterback for Virginia. That's been the case all fall camp. But here's the thing. Can y'all tell me who was the leading passer in a season under Tony Elliott in his first 3 years at UVA? I'll
Probably
give you the
Brennan.
yards. It was 2,210 yards.
13 touchdowns. Probably Calandria.
Has to be Cody.
Calandri had the 13 touchdowns, but the
Okay.
yards was Brennan Armstrong.
Brighton.
So
Okay. All right. Yeah.
that's the benchmark right now. And so I'm going to put it this way. Does Chandler Morris exceed both of those stats, the 2,210 yards and 13 touchdowns?
Yes.
I think that's pretty easy. What have y'all liked? I think both of y'all came out with stories about Chandler Morris this week, or last week. What did you like about Morris, Jackie, just from what you saw him in this first fall camp?
Well, we didn't see much of him throwing at fall camp
That's true.
with their media availabilities, so I'm going to be transparent there. But we have heard from people around the program, but also just seeing him and how his chemistry with the other players. I think that's what stands out to me as well. When I did the nutrition story, I was able to go into the facility and I saw how they kind of handled the meal times. And you see him sitting with the O linemen and the quarterbacks, and you see how that camaraderie there. I kind of joked with one of the coaches this year that because of the way the portal kind of organized, you have a lot of old men in that locker room that are going to the next stage, either they're married or engaged, and you can kind of see them, him and Brady Wilson, have a good connection with each other, and him and Sage Ennis. So I think that's the part that stands out about Chandler Morris is that veteran leadership, is that command of the offense when you have an older guy leading the offense, and that's I think something that they lacked. No fault to Anthony Calandra. He was just, a freshman coming in after Muskin was hurt, and then he was a sophomore. So he didn't have that leadership quality. He didn't learn that. I mean, he was thrown under the fire, in the fire. So you have that. But honestly, even behind the scenes on the football field, I mean, they've been really happy with what he's been able to do. I think one of the things that intrigues me is when you look at his background in North Texas, he didn't zero in on one receiver. So when you look at that receiver room for Virginia, you should get excited because you have several targets that he can throw to. So when you're looking at, he's not going to zero in on one particular guy. You're not going to have him zero in like last year. Malachi Fields is probably who everybody assumed that would get the throw. This year, you have several targets, and I think Chandler Morris will be able to use that to his advantage. So it's exciting for Virginia. I think when you look back in January, December, when they were trying to find a quarterback, I mean, Chandler Morris and Daniel Kalen were the two targets. They were number one, number two. They knew that Chandler was going to be their guy, and then Daniel Kalen was going to be the guy of the future, and they got them. There's a reason why they were excited.
Yeah, you look at that wide receiver room, and it's almost perfect because you don't have the one guy there, and that's kind of how Morris prefers to play. I asked Des Kitchings earlier, in our first time that we talked to him in the fall camp, and he said without a doubt Chandler Morris is the best fit at quarterback that they've had in this program because of the experience, the maturity, but also just his play style and stuff. Because they had an experienced quarterback and Brennan Armstrong and Tony Muskett, but I think he fits this offense really well. Greg, just any other thoughts you want to get out there on Chandler Morris before we move on?
Yeah, just to build off what Jackie was saying, last year at North Texas, he had five receivers with at least 25 catches, six with multiple touchdowns, and five with at least 300 receiving yards. So that gives you an idea. And part of that is the offense he played in, right? He played in an air raid system. So there is some adjustment here, which will be more balanced. But I think you'll see some air raid elements incorporated into what Virginia does based on kind of what we've heard from Dez, Tony Elliott, and also Chandler himself, and how there's some collaboration that's gone on with Chandler. I think they've let him have a voice in how this offense is going to run, and they've asked him for feedback. And because he's been around the block, right, been at Oklahoma, been at TCU, been at North Texas, played for different coaches, different offensive coordinators, he hasn't been afraid to speak up. And Dez has said that's something that's really, really valuable when you have a quarterback who's a high-level communicator and can stress to you, hey, coach, this isn't working. Let's not have this in the system. I think there's an advantage in that. And Des said he's the one who has to go out there and play. So let's do things that make him comfortable. And I think that's kind of the approach they've taken with a lot of the transfers, but particularly at quarterback with Chandler Morris.
Let's go ahead to the rushing leader. Last year, they came so close to getting that 500-yard mark that they haven't hit since 2018 from the running back position. Kobe Pace at 499 and Xavier Brown at 488. Of course, they both missed the last game of the season, and that was an interesting game against Virginia Tech. Just running back depth wise, they are much better off this year. Guys, who are we leaning here? I know Jamari Taylor has been the hot name. Greg, who you have as the rushing leader?
Yeah, it's Taylor. He was an 1,000-yard back last year at North Carolina Central. He's been the guy. It seems like I know there's kind of this 1A, 1B with Taylor and Xavier Brown, but I think Taylor will be the lead back and Virginia and he'll eclipse that 500-yard mark, right? He was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Even if he does half of what he did last year, he'll eclipse the 500-yard mark, and Virginia will have that. You can dust off the Jordan Ellis name, right? Get somebody else will join him.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, you can't fully dust it off until someone gets 1,000 again.
Right, but I'm saying for
Yeah.
500 yards, right? He's the last to at least get
Yeah.
over 500.
Yeah, I agree with Jamari Taylor. I mean, he's been the standout since the spring. I also think just that Xavier Brown, they're going to use him a little bit differently this year. And obviously he's not, you don't need him as much, but hopefully they use him more because they keep saying they're going to use him more. And obviously last year the stats showed that they should have used him more. But I think using him as a receiver, using him just in some different ways, I think it's going to help him out a little bit more too. I think they both hit 500 because I think they were almost there last year with a not as good offensive line and both the guys getting banged up. So I think they both hit 500 this year. Jackie, are you sticking with Jamari Taylor as the leader?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Gaither has not been shy of talking about how good Jamari Taylor is. I think in the last press conference he had with us, he said he's probably going to be one of the best backs in the ACC. So yeah, Jamari Taylor, I think he's going to be the leader rusher. Xavier Brown will be utilized, like you said, in different ways, I think. And I think because of Jamari Taylor's durability, the way he stayed healthy during his time in his previous school, I think you're going to see him more on the field, which means Xavier Brown is going to be able to do what he does best and hopefully also stay healthy too. So I think Jamari Taylor will lead in rusher and Xavier Brown will get more than he did last year.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm also going to make this claim. I think personality wise, UVA might have the best running back duo in the ACC. Like Jamari Taylor, just like that guy, like has a smile on his face the entire time, no matter what he's doing. And Xavier Brown has always been, just awesome to talk to. But receiving leader, Jackie, it's time to stamp for your guy. You called him last year. Hopefully this year you get a little bit more game time there with Trell Harris.
Yes, yes. I'm sticking with Trail Harris just because he has the ability to stretch the field. So I think he just needs to stay healthy. But I definitely do see the potential there. I know there's a lot of talk of Cam Ross during this training camp and even some in the spring. So he's kind of like my second choice there. But Trail Harris, I have to go with him because he was my breakout guy last year. You can't break out because people know who you are this year. So I think Trail Harris will be one of the favorite targets.
Greg, where are you going?
Yeah, Harris, Trell Harris. He hosted Chandler Morris on Morris's official visit to Virginia back in the winter. So he's been kind of clamoring to Chandler. Hey, throw me the football. So I'll go with. I'm going to say this. I'll go Harris for receiving yards, and I'll go Cam Ross for receptions.
Okay, yeah, playing that slot position, get a couple more
I think
throws.
He's going to get enough touch, and look at what he's done throughout his career, right? Like he's caught passes everywhere he's been with whoever's been the quarterback, whether it's been at UConn or James Madison. Cam Ross has made a ton of plays, and I think he's going to continue to do that at UVA.
Because you want to be different, do you have a receiving touchdowns leader too?
Oh, Jamal Edra. Nah, I'm going to hold off. I think it'd probably be Harris, right? I would think the guy with the most yards is going to have the most touchdown catches, but we'll see.
I mean, the guy had a knack for finding the end zone in the little bit of sample size that we got to 100%. See him. You think the Richmond catch that he made there, and then
As
Wake
long as he's
Forest.
healthy, he's going to produce.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So it's a clean sweep, through all of the offensive stat categories. How about offensive MVP now? I'm gonna keep it simple. I think that's just what it is. It's Chandler Morris for me. I have a couple other options in mind. Last year I think we maybe we all clean sweeped went Brian Stevens, and I think there's another guy at center that could kind of be in the conversation too. But Greg, who do you have as your offensive MVP?
Chandler Morris. If this
Yeah.
team's going to do what it has to do what it wants to do, and get to a bowl game, like he's got to be the guy.
Jackie, same.
And the same, last year we chose Brian Stevens because we knew that Anthony Colandrea was going to be the starting quarterback and you needed a veteran guy there,
Yeah.
right? You needed a veteran guy voice. And that's what Brian Stevens says. We have that veteran voice in Chandler Morris. So, like Greg says, if Virginia wants to do what it wants to do and be successful, Chandler Morris will have to be your offensive MVP.
That's what you want anyway. You want your quarterback to be the MVP of the offense and kind of be the leader. That's just what you want out there. Offensive under the radar. Jackie, last year, I can't remember who you went with last year, but who do you have this year? Who's catching your eye?
Wasn't it Trail Harris too? I think I doubled up.
I think it might have been Trell Harris. I didn't want to say that, but I think we'll go with that.
I want to, yeah. I think I'm gonna go Dakota Tweedy. I don't know if he's
Okay.
under the radar, but I think because he adjusted to his new role at tight end, coming from wide receiver. I think the expectation is that this will be his breakout year at tight end. I think that's what the staff would really want from Dakota this year. So I think he could be the one that I would put under the radar because with him and Sage Ennis helping in run blocking, kind of like what they expected from last year between Tyler Neville and Sage Ennis and that kind of partnership until Sage
Yeah.
was hurt and then Tyler Neville kind of had to adjust his role a bit. I think that's what they envision this year with Dakota Tweedy and Sage Ennis. So I could see him as being the under radar guy.
I'm still envisioning Tyler Neville wide open over the middle and no one throwing him the football. That's just me going back with nightmares. Greg, who do you have under the radar?
At some point, they're going to need Harrison Whaley. At some
Oh,
point, they're going to need the Wyoming transfer. Have you seen the run he had against Texas 2 years ago?
you told me about it back when he committed, and I went and watched, and I'm a believer as well.
Yeah, he's not going to be the starter.
Yeah,
He's not going to have the second most carries on the team, right? It's going to be one. He may not even have the third most carries on the team. That could end up being Morris, right? With what his skill set is. But at some point, right, you're going to need your third running back, and Virginia's lacked that, right? They haven't had that. They had a little bit of a three-man rotation a couple of years ago, right? A couple of years ago, 2023. But they didn't have it last year and they missed it. And I think at some point they're gonna have to turn to him. And he's been a number one guy before. He's at what 11 100-yard games in his career.
yeah.
Like something tells me like just because he's lower on the depth chart now doesn't mean he can't rise up and be a contributor for UVA. And I think, that was a first quarter early game touchdown against the Longhorns that he broke off. I think it was a 60 something yarder. And that's against Texas first string defense. If you can do that, you can play a little bit, and you've got the speed to break away from fast guys in that secondary. So to me, at some point they're going to need him, and at some point he'll deliver.
I know none of us are big video game people, but if you're only a Virginia fan and you only pay attention to the college football video game, Harrison Whaley is like one of the top overall guys on the Virginia team. I don't know where they got their rating systems and everything. I think he's a good player, but I don't know if one of the top guys on the team. I think Cam Robinson might even be behind him. I'm not sure. I don't play the game, but I've heard a lot. My guy is just because we haven't talked about him since the spring, and we were kind of talking before. Like and Chandler Morris mentioned it on my podcast too. Like Jamal Edgerton's had a big class load this offseason, and he's trying to get through that and get some classes done. But the first name off of Morris's, out of Morris's mouth, as far as like guys that have stood out offensively to him, is Jamal Edgerton. And look, the guy's 6'3", 220 pounds. He looks like he does. Like he's kind of like chiseled out of marble, but he looks the part. He was on the Senior Bowl top 300 list. So there's a little bit of hype around him. We haven't heard as much about fall camp, and that could be a number of different things. But I think at some point this year he's gonna make some big plays and have some big splash plays out there.
Yeah, I think he's good. I think he looks the part, right? You
Yeah.
just got to see it, and I think having that option as a big, tall, physical guy, everybody wondered how they're going to replace Malachi Fields. Well, it seems like he's going to be the plug and play option.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. And I think Jackie Greg was doing some like pre-work on this because he asked Tony Elliott about if the safeties were going to lead in tackles again, if that's what he wanted. And so I think he was getting some prep in for the podcast. Of course, Jonas Sanker led the team in tackles the last 2 seasons now. This was actually kind of one of the harder ones for me. I kind of landed on a safe option, I think, but with Cam Robinson being injured for like the first part of the season, you don't know what his tackle numbers are going to look like. You don't have that like given in the secondary with we'll see what Devin Neal looks like as a run game fit kind of guy, and Antonio Clary is still kind of getting back up to health. He's into August is kind of when they expect him to get back. So I went with James Jackson because I thought he looked really good moving around out there this fall camp, and obviously being a veteran guy out there, I feel like he's the safe pick. Jackie, did you have someone else as your tackles leader for this year?
Well, I'm kind of with Tony Elliott. If your safety is your leading tackler, then all the stuff that you did all the offseason didn't work, right?
Yeah.
Your D-line depth and your addition. So if Devin Neal's your leading tackler, then something went wrong there. So I'm gonna go with James Jackson. I would have gone with Cam Robinson
Yeah.
if he was healthy from the start of the season, but since he's probably going to be towards the end of September, early October, probably since he'll be back if the timeline fits. Then I'm gonna go with James Jackson. I mean, James Jackson looks really good out there. He's gonna be your number one guy. I think obviously Trey McDonald is gonna be the one who I figure we starting with him, but then he probably will have Landon Danley come in sometimes because they've been really high on Landon Danley this past year and his development there. So, but yeah, I think James Jackson, I think has to be your leading tackler at the end of the day. A linebacker needs to be your leading tackler for it to be a good year.
And just because if he stays healthy, he'll have a couple more snaps. Greg, where you going?
Yeah, just clean sweep. You guys have pretty much said everything you needed to say. He also is like the leader, alpha male of the defense, right?
The guy is
So
talking a lot in camp right now. Like you can hear him like
yeah,
getting on offensive guys all over the field.
tired of
Um,
losing, right? Wants to
Yeah,
win.
yeah. He's been here long enough. Sacks leader last year, none of us got that right. Cam Robinson led the team with 5 sacks. I'm not going to pick Cam Robinson this year. Who do you have, Greg? A lot of new names to pick from.
I'll go Fisher, Kamak, proven, done it. Uh, did it at UNLV, and really, I mean, the way he finished the year in a bowl game, really put him on the map, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
People knew who he was before, but then the bowl game put him on the map and gave him an opportunity to play at the Power Four level. I'll go Fisher, Kamak. I think you just look at him, right? 6'6", 6'7", long, tall, athletic, can get off the ball. I think he'll be their leading sack guy this year.
I mean, if he could have another 3 sack game, I would definitely pick him again too, because
Yeah.
that's good production right there. Jackie?
Yeah, I'm going with Fisher Kamak too. I mean, when he committed to Virginia, I was like, there you go. They're going to get to the quarterback. I think that was a really, really good win for them. They really kind of zeroed in on him and did a good job of securing him. He had what 15 tackles for a loss last
Yeah.
year, 7.5 sacks. I mean, he played really well in the Mountain West Coastal title game. I mean, he's a great player. I know like Milton Melton will probably be my second choice there, but I think Fisher Kamak, I think he's gonna impress a lot of fans this year.
I figured both y'all go with Fisher Kamek. He was my one of my favorite pickups they had in the transfer portal. He's just a specimen that they have not had at that pass rushing position in quite some time now. But Mitchell Melton was my pick. I think I've been really impressed with just what he's kind of brought to this team, leadership wise and everything. But I also just think that that guy's edging and ready to go. Like he's been sitting behind a really talented defensive line the last few years at Ohio State, and I think he's ready to get out there and get after the quarterback. Interceptions leader last year it was Corey Thomas with 2. I don't. Do we get more than 2 this year, or is two the number we're looking for? I've got Devin Neal. I think he's shown it before at Louisville. We talked about the interception that he had against Virginia. But I think he's just going to be the most steady player that we have back there in the secondary this season. Jackie, who you got interceptions?
I might go out on a limb and say Donovan Platt.
Okay.
I think he's done. I mean, he intercepted Chandler Morris and makes Morris well aware of that fact several times. I think Donovan Platt's going to be the starting corner. I know we're kind of up in the air about that because of the way the injuries have been during the fall camp, but they've been so excited about Donovan Platt. I think Devin Neal is going to be a good one as well. Honestly, and maybe this one fits more under the radar. Ethan Minter has been the ball hawk.
He got an interception last week. Yeah.
Got an interception. He always, I mean, every time I talk to a DB, they're always saying either he's around the ball or he has the hands around the ball. So I think I'm good at choosing Donovan Platt, but in my back of my mind, I'm like, if Ethan Minter has a bigger role, I can see him around the ball a little more.
Yeah. Greg,
I'm going to go off the radar here.
here we go.
Jason Prevard.
Okay, that's a good one.
State transfer. He's going to play nickel corner for the Who's, right? Going to be in when it's clear cut passing down situations. From what it seems like, I think he's got some length, right? He played traditional corner, true cornerback at Morgan State, and in his transition up to the power four, he's going to play the nickel corner spot, and I think, given his skill set, he'll be able to come down with a few passes and help Virginia's defense in that department. So I'll go Jason Prevard.
That's a good one. He had an interception in the spring game. It was kind of like a Hail Mary catch the ball in the end zone, but
He told me in one of the interview sessions he had a couple of interceptions in one practice. The practice that we talked to him at interviews after that practice, he was like, "I came down with a couple of picks." I was like, "Oh, you want to tell me who that's against?" And he's like, "Nah, I don't want to do that to anybody." So I was like, "So I'll go with Prevard. I like his confidence. I like his style. I think he's got the right mentality."
yeah, he looked really good in the spring, and I think people might have just forgotten him because
Yeah.
sometimes you get that initial burst of excitement in the spring, and then
Yeah.
fall camp kind of rolls around, and you're looking at the new pieces.
Well, it's because he's kind of settled his position. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the other
We
secondary,
don't have to talk about him anymore.
yeah, he's got his role.
Set it and forget it. Defensive MVP. This one I struggled with, and I might actually change my answer again because this is the Cam Robinson Award for me. And if he's healthy for a good chunk of the season after he returns, I still think he could get it. But I'm not sure which other direction to go because I think there's a lot of good pieces on this defense. I'm just not sure if anyone stands out at that level. Greg, who do you have for defensive MVP?
Yeah, I'll go with Kamak.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
pass
if
rush.
he's going to get to the quarterback a ton, which I think he's got the capability to. I think that adds something to Virginia's defense that it has not had since 2022.
Jackie, who do you have?
Yeah, I was kind of going the same way. If Fisher Kamak is my sacks leader, he would be my defensive MVP. So because if you're getting to the quarterback, then everything else is working. You're not having your linebackers getting to double teams. You're not making your safeties having to do miracles in the backfield. You're not going to have them like rushing to get big plays. So yeah, I'm going Fisher Kamak.
I'll stick with Cam Robinson as my, off the radar pick just because, he's going to miss a couple games. If he can come back in a timely manner, I still think like maybe he just gets shot out of a cannon and has a good season. Obviously, he's going to have to stay healthy because obviously when you return from injury, it doesn't necessarily mean you stay off the trainer's table. But I'll stick with Cam Robinson there just because, I love the guy. Defensive under the radar pick here. I'm just going to go with a guy, maybe not completely under the radar, but we hadn't heard a lot from him in this fall camp because he's been injured. But Emmanuel Carnley, I think, you mentioned Donovan Platt as one starting corner. I feel like Carnley is the guy on the other side. As soon as he got healthy, he was kind of back in the lineup. I really like him, just long, lengthy corner there. I think he could be a guy that, maybe if he's not the starter by week one, he's kind of going to be a guy that's going to be a factor on this defense as the season progresses. Greg?
Jacob Holmes, Fresno State transfer, defensive tackle, 8.5 sacks over the last 2 years out of the interior of the defensive line. To me, that's another part of another part that Virginia just hasn't frankly had over the last couple of years. While he had 8.5 over the last two, I think Virginia's defensive tackles combined for 4.5 sacks over the last 2 years. So if you can get that pressure and push the pocket from the interior of the defense, think about what it could do for Kamak too, and what it could do for Mitchell Melton and the rest of the unit. And I think he'll play in pass rushing situations, right? I think Carter and either Britton or Hammond will start. But I think Holmes, he's been a good player, and I think he's got some twitchiness to him, is what Kevin Downing had told me. He plays with a kind of an edge and a relentlessness to him when he's rushing the passer. He's not going to be a bull rush guy. He's going to be a guy who uses finesse moves, from what he told me. I think he's going to help this team in a unique role that Virginia just hasn't had.
He's a big guy to be talking about finesse, but yeah, I
That's what
fully
he told
believe
me.
it. Yeah.
He goes, I'm not really the bull rush type. I'm not going to look to just plow through the guard or in the center. He's like, I'm going to try to use my quickness to my advantage and get low and maneuver in order to get to the quarterback. He says he's probably got really good hands that helps him free up, but he's not just going to try to barrel through.
That's a good one. He could be like a guy that you talk about, that little NASCAR package that they had last year, just
Yeah.
getting after the quarterback. They kind of went to that later in the season. He could be a guy that they throw in there on those downs. One other name, I don't want to cut you off, Jackie, but one other name that Chandler Morris threw at me has been the guy that's given him the most headaches throughout fall camp on the defensive side. It was not a name I was necessarily expecting. It was Dan Rickert, the Tennessee Tech transfer. And just the brief little glimpses that we've gotten to see in this, some of the scrimmages that we've seen, the guy gets into the backfield pretty quickly. So I don't see him as a every down player, but I think he is a guy that they could throw out there in some of those pass rush situations. Jackie, who do you have year under the radar?
I think Rickert was playing with the twos at some point during that one of
Mhm.
those play team drills that they actually allowed us to see during the
Yeah,
practices. But Greg kind of stole mine. Jacob Holmes was my pick. Darn you, Greg, for going first. But yeah, Jacob
Sorry.
Holmes, yeah. When I remember talking to him after he transferred, he committed to Virginia. And he was saying that one of the reasons why he committed was obviously his relationship with Kevin Downing. He loved talking to Downing, but it was because Kevin Downing was explaining to him that they were going to use his pass rushing skill set to their advantage. So that's kind of goes to what Greg was saying. So I think because Virginia is so focused on getting to the quarterback now, you're going to see Jacob Holmes a little bit more in some of those situations. And I think because everyone's so focused on the guys who are returning, obviously you have guys inside like Jameer Carter, Anthony Britton, Jason Hammond that are returning in there. And then you have Hunter Osborne coming from Alabama. I feel like he's kind of lost in the shuffle. So that's why I think because of that kind of scenario and environment, Jacob Holmes can surprise a few people. Although he was a really good get in the portal when he committed, it was a very big win for Virginia, but because of all the other things and factors coming in, I think people have forgotten him a little bit, especially because he was hurt for a couple, I think the first week and a half from fall camp, so not discussed as much.
yeah. All right, special teams MVP. This is one that we kind of did on the fly last year, so I added as an official category this year. I'm gonna throw out, the freak himself, Daniel Sparks. He's one of the best athletes at the punter position in the country, according to Keith Gaither. And maybe that leads to maybe a fake this season. I don't know if we've seen it yet with Sparks. I don't think he's run. I can't remember a time during his long, illustrious Virginia career, but yeah, he's someone that just he's gotten a lot of talk this offseason because of the freaks list over there at the Athletic. Yeah, but is Cam Ross the option here that y'all are thinking of?
That's where I was going to go. Uh,
Yeah.
they've been right. They improved on special teams last year in the kick coverage game, the punt coverage game. They just haven't figured out how to return the football. The hope last year was that Chris Tyree would do it, right? But he was banged up, Preston. He was banged up in camp, banged up during the season. Just he didn't seem to be able to contribute on special teams until later in the year, and then he muffed the punt against Notre
As
Dame.
yeah,
So it just didn't work out for whatever reason. And then you bring in Cam Ross. He's got some accolades. He has special teams wise, bringing with him from James Madison. And it seems like he was the lead guy on both punt and kick return last time Keith Gaither, the special teams coordinator, talked. So to me, I think if Virginia is going to get some more positive results out of its return game, he's going to have to be the guy you're talking about in terms of special teams MVP.
Yeah, I agree. Like Cam Ross was going to be my special teams MVP because kind of like if Virginia wants to reach its goals, Cam Ross will have to be your special teams MVP. The only thing I would say is you have a lot of under the radar guys on special teams that I think make those big plays. I mean, Jonas Senker was that guy last year and Landon Downs
Oof.
as well.
Yeah.
I think when you look at special teams, I think those are the guys that I would say are going to step up. And I think Landon Danley, maybe even Miles Brown to a certain extent, because that's who's also been getting a lot of reps. I think those are the guys too that I would look to. And Stevie Bracey when he's wasn't hurt, because that was his role, right? So until he was hurt before the season last year. So Cam Ross is my overall MVP, but I think for Virginia special teams overall to work, you're going to look at some of those linebackers who are going to step up on special teams. And I think even Landon Danley won one of the MVP team awards from last year. I think it was maybe the first year rookie of the year for special teams or something along those lines. So I think for special teams to be successful, you not only have Cam Ross as a returner, but one of those linebackers will have to be your MVP for special teams too.
All right, that's gonna do it for all the season overall predictions. But real quick, while I have you, because I'm not gonna do a Coastal Carolina prediction show or preview, so I wanted to kind of quickly talk about this game. UVA goes in as a 12 and a half point favorite. The Cavaliers won by 19 last season. Can you tell me what the biggest win of the Tony Elliott era was?
What do you mean,
Biggest
margin of victory? Are you talking?
Yeah, margin of victory.
Was it the Duke game a couple years ago?
It was not. No.
Okay. I was trying to remember. Can't. I
wasn't it
can't.
William Henry?
So here, going back, so 19, I thought, well, that surely can't be it. And it's not. It's the Richmond game from last season where they won
Ah,
34-13. So
okay.
21 points is the biggest margin of victory. So you look at like the 12 and a half, Cavaliers won by 19 last season. My question is, do they do they cover first of all, and do they win by a larger margin than 19?
I'm gonna say Coastal Carolina. Go ahead, Jackie. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say they definitely cover that. And I know they have two new quarter coordinators over at Coastal. I think they'll go over. I think Virginia's offense. I've been hearing so much about their being explosive.
Yeah.
So I'm going to buy into that, and I can see them going over and maybe winning by the same type of margin like against Richmond.
Greg, you seem like you were not going over.
I think they'll cover. I don't think
Yeah.
they're gonna go over to 19. I think Coastal Carolina. That I don't like all the unknowns with Coastal Carolina's offense, right? They're going to run an air raid system. The quarterback, you have an idea, is going to be MJ Morris. But Virginia, with some of the injuries and in and out on defense during training camp. A lot of new faces coming in, right? They brought in 7 defensive backs after the spring. I don't love that when you're facing an air raid offense that you may not know everything about. It's going to require a lot of adjusting on the fly. And I know John Radinsky and Chrome Cox have done this before where they bring in, new corners and new safeties and turn the secondary over. But this is the first year they're having to do it without Jonas Sanker there to keep everything together. So I tend to think Coastal Carolina is going to be able to score the ball a little bit this first game. But Virginia's offense will do okay too. Be more of a high scoring game. I think they'll cover the 12, but not necessarily get to plus 19.
I'm kind of where you are. I think they'll cover the 12. I'm going to go around 17 just because I look at the history of kind of how Tony Elliott teams start the season, and we look at that Richmond game. I mean, that Richmond game was so weird last year because,
Yeah.
the big delay in the middle of it, and then
Yeah.
afterwards Richmond kind of picked up some speed. But yeah, you talk about this Coastal Carolina team, two new coordinators, 33 transfers. That's more than Virginia. And so there's a lot of unknown about this Coastal team. So I'm going to go 17 just to be safe. But it was interesting. The last time Virginia won by more than 21 was against Duke back in that last year under Bronco Mendenhall when they won. I think it was 48-0, which is wild to see how far Duke has come as a program since
Yeah.
then. That Virginia beat them by that much not too long ago. So, all right, that is going to do it for this season preview, guys. We are just a few days away now from the kickoff to another new season and the ends of our social calendars. So, buckle up. Here we go. Another football season on the way. Greg, Jackie, thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
All right, that'll do it for the Who's On podcast. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Apple. Leave those 5-star reviews. We will catch you later in the week with another podcast before we get going on kickoff coming up this Saturday. It's Scott Sam. That'll do it for the Who's On podcast. See you later.